everyone. So yesterday you should have gone over those tone notes and you should practice how to find tone. And so what I was going to do is to kind of give you a video preview, because today you should be working on finding the tone of Following the Drinking Gourd on your own. And of course I'm going to include your context clue chart at the bottom, so it's kind of a dual thing. But mostly because this context clue chart offers us the opportunity to think about whether this word has a positive or negative meaning, so we're thinking about our connotation. So when you read The Slave's Lament, first you have to start with just reading it to yourself and thinking what overall is this positive or negative, and then once we can figure that out, we can move on from there. And I'm sure the video may have looked at this a little bit differently, but this is how Miss Roundtree thinks about it. So if there were some things in the notes that kind of left you a little open-ended, this is just how another more mature reader would think about it. So let's start by reading the poem. It was in sweet Senegal that my foes did me enthrall, for the lands of Virginia, Inya, oh. So remember, this does sound more like a song. Torn from this lovely shore, and must never see it more. And alas, I am weary, weary, oh. Torn from that lovely shore, and must never see it more. And alas, I am weary, oh, oh. All on that charming coast is no bitter snow and frost, like the lands of Virginia, oh. There's streams that ever flow, and their flowers forever blow. And alas, I am weary, weary, oh. There are streams forever flow, and there are flowers forever blow. And alas, I am weary, weary, oh. The burden I must bear, while the crews scourge I fear, in the lands of Virginia and oh. And I think on friends most dear, with the bitter, bitter tear, and alas, I am weary, weary, oh. And I think on my friends most dear, with the bitter, bitter tear, and alas, I am weary, oh, oh. So this poem actually does us a huge favor with the vocabulary. So if we just go through and we look, you can see, I'm actually going to do a little bit of color coding here. So whenever they're speaking of home, Senegal, so whenever they're talking of their home, they're using a positive connotation. So I'm going to use green because the green's a positive color in my head. So that whenever they're talking about home, they're positive, okay? But whenever they start talking about their captors, they're using negative words. So foe means enemy, right? Because if you did your chart, you probably... Enthrall means to capture. And then torn from that lovely shore. So even if we're torn from it, that phrase, that's overwhelmingly negative. And then again, we're going to talk about Senegal, so we're going to say lovely, so it's positive. So you can see it's called juxtaposition, where you use opposites. So you can see when they're constantly thinking of home, it's positive. And then whenever they're talking about their current situation, it's negative. Okay? So the term for it is when you are nostalgic for something that you once had, that you love, that feeling is bittersweet. Okay? This is going to sound really lame, but think about if you've ever had a boyfriend or a girlfriend whom you really liked. And now that you're broken up, you're broken up with them, it's over. But every now and then you remember things that you did with them or little memories that you have, and it feels bittersweet because that memory is good, but your overall current situation with that person is bad. So that's that term, bittersweet. Okay, and then we got I am weary. So the speaker is actually telling you how they feel, and that term is weary. I didn't mean to make that orange, excuse me. So this speaker feels tired. Okay, so we come looking at that charming coast again. We're talking about home in a positive way. So I got that bittersweet, bitter snow and frost, which would be a negative. So even just thinking of it, because there's positive ways to describe snow. So in this one, again, they're still describing Virginia in this negative way. And then we're going to talk about home. It's going to be positive. But look, here's that word again. I am weary. So again, the speaker is telling you how they feel, which is a really nice thing to have when you're trying to look for the tone. Okay. The burden I must bear. Okay, this sounds just resolved. It's not necessarily negative. It just sounds like you have accepted it. So I'm going to put that in the middle. I'm going to make that orange because it just sounds, like I said, it just sounds like this is just something that they have to deal with. That's what a burden is. But however, cruel scourge I fear. So, I mean, he's telling you that the burden I must bear, why the cruel scourge I fear. So he's telling you about what's going to happen when he gets there, those cruel people. I think on friends most dear with a bitter, bitter tear. So again, that idea of it being bittersweet. Okay. I am weary. Oh. So I didn't highlight everything. I just kind of wanted to show you the positives and the negatives. So when I'm looking at this poem is overwhelmingly negative. Because, you know, they're slaves going in a boat and they're sad because they're being taken away from their home. So I'm thinking about, okay, what is this poem talking about? Number one. So let me make this in a little note over here. So when I'm thinking about this, I don't like that you can't see where I want to put it. Here, let me put it right here. So when I'm thinking about this, I am thinking about, sorry, I had to extend my screen. I'm thinking number one, what is the poem about? Okay, so that seems kind of silly, but if I can think about what is the topic of this poem, I can think about whether or not that topic is positive or negative too. And that does help with your tone in some aspects. Okay, so theme does actually help with tone. And then two, I'm looking, are the words mostly negative or mostly positive? So I'm looking for an overwhelming majority here. And this is, of course, mostly negative. Three, does the speaker ever tell me how they feel? So in this case, the speaker does. I am weary. He tells me how he feels. And then, of course, I'm going to be looking for, when I say positive versus negative, how does the author use positive and negative words? So, like I said, that's just me thinking about the fact that he's talking about home being positive and he's talking about where he's going as a negative. So this whole poem is about the slave thinking back on home and feeling sad and overwhelmed and just generally anxious about what's to come. Okay, and that kind of goes with that idea of being weary. When you're weary, it means that you're tired. The world has dealt you too much. Okay, so when I'm thinking about the tone here, so when I want to go, I'm going to highlight this last thing just so you can see my no, we're not going to do that there. We're going to highlight somewhere else, and then I want you to be able to see where I'm writing. I'm going to highlight this first one, add a little thing. Okay, so when I am thinking about my tone here, I'm going to think to myself, tone is how the speaker or author feels. So it just depends on whether or not we are doing a poem or a story. Okay, so tone is how the speaker or the author feels. And then I have to think to myself, tone is negative. So because most of the language is negative. So that's my next logical thing. And now I have to think to myself, what negative emotion best describes what I see the speaker or author feeling? So that's my last question. So this is how I think to myself. So I say, okay, tone is how the speaker or author feels. I'm going to, number one, go and look at my words, figure out if they're positive or negative, find out what these words mean, which you guys have already done with your context clue chart. So you're already done that part. And then I think to myself, okay, is it positive or negative? And then in this particular case, I say the tone is negative because of the language is mostly negative. And of course, how he's using that negative language. And then finally, what negative emotion, or if it's positive, because I believe follow the drinking gourd might be positive. What positive emotion best describes the tone here? So I need to figure out what emotion best describes it. So in this particular case, the tone of this poem is, I'm going to put it together. I'm going to put a couple of things together because I'm trying to, so the speaker, this is the lament. So if you had to look up the word lament, it's also a lamentation is when you look back on something that you long for or that you miss. So the tone of this poem is anxious and tired. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to continue to explain it a little bit more. The speaker uses language that focuses on how the slaves missed home and also how they looked towards the future with concern. So that's how I'm going to explain myself. So whenever you think about the tone, you also have to be able to explain why the tone is that way that is. Because if you can justify it in your own words, then you've gone above and beyond what a multiple choice questions ask you to do, because you have actual proof. And so if I wanted to break down this statement further, the second one, so how the slaves missed home, lovely shore, charming coast, streams forever flow. Like they're constantly looking back at Senegal and missing it. So I can prove that. And then also how they look towards the future with concern. I'm weary, burden I must bear while the cruel scourge I fear. So I have proof that shows that when they're looking toward the future that they're nervous or scared. So I hope this breakdown of how I think about it was helpful for you all. I hope putting my thoughts out here to the side was helpful. Remember, with videos, you're always welcome to rewind and pause and think back on it. But this is a good process for you to practice. Go through, pick out those positive and negative words, and then ask yourself those questions that I've put right here. Think about those 4 questions. So if my process is better for you than the process you learned in your notes, you're welcome to combine the 2 and work your way through it. But remember, it always comes down to, is it overwhelmingly positive, overwhelmingly negative? Is there a change somewhere in the poem where the speaker switches? And can you prove it? Okay, I hope this was helpful. You guys have a great day.